So hello everyone. It's a great pleasure to the microphone is okay. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the second online lecture. And today's talk will be presented by Professor Isabel Grimm-Stadelmann. Professor, I'll just set the PowerPoint and the floor, the microphone, the audience for you.
So I think it works. Yeah, it's perfect. So yeah, thank you very, very much, Sophia, Andrzej, Christoph, Jan, for the really very, very honorable invitation. I'm absolutely honored and glad to be here. And thank you also much, because I saw you online for hosting me here so excellently. And I'm really very, very happy and delighted to be here in Łódź and to tell you a little bit of my research project, editing John Zacharias, the Aktouarios, and we will hear a little bit about his treatise on psychic pneuma, the psychikon pneuma. We do not really know what it is, but maybe in the course of my paper, we will have some more insights to discuss afterwards. So nowadays, many people suffer from illnesses characterized as burnout, depressive disorders, or emotional exhaustion. The causes of such illnesses are commonly considered to be the result of a general physical and psychological overload. We all know this in professional and private life, but they can also be a direct reaction to social phenomena and are usually completely independent of the socio-cultural context and age of those affected. An interesting question might be whether the state of being physically and emotionally burned out exclusively is a contemporary phenomenon, or whether historical sources report on comparable phenomena and the associated challenges for therapists and patients. And this is the question we might discuss today. Closely related to such questions is the high-ranking Byzantine physician and Aktouarios John Zacharias, whom we can see here on the slide in the famous Bologna manuscript. His title, Aktouarios, indicates a doctor in leading position whose responsibilities possibly are comparable with those of today's chief physicians. John Zacharias describes and analyzes physical and mental impairments in his two-part treatise on psychic pneuma. These impairments are quite comparable to today's burnout symptoms, or more correctly, anxiety disorders. According to John's argumentation, the psychic pneuma can be understood as a psychic, emotional, bodily fluid having its origin in the brain and promoting health and well-being when it flows through the body unhindered. When blockages inhibit its flow, however, depression, sleep disorders, anxiety, loss of appetite and power, physical and mental exhaustion, and general incapacitation arises. In other words, the classic burnout symptoms. The treatise by John Zacharias contains specific advice on how such blockages can be avoided, balanced, or completely eliminated through a holistic life concept being adapted to the individual patient's physical constitution by means of a balanced diet. And this is why we are here at Ceraneum Centre for the dietary studies, and a sufficient exercise in the fresh air. We did it today, yesterday, all over. aroma bathing therapy, and judiciously coordinated phases of activity and rest. In short, a medieval wellness program. So now we can see on the slide some pieces of manuscripts, which I will explain in short. The Aktouarios John Zacharias is quite rare in Byzantine medicine, a historical person, and this is really very important because this is rare in Byzantine medicine, that we have a historical person speaking to us from these texts, whose biography, education, career, and life circumstances are described in detail in a rich contemporary correspondence, albeit we do not have an autograph sample of John Zacharias himself. And from this correspondence, we learn, for example, that John's family came from northern Greece. We can see on the slide some pictures about northern Greece and the area of Ceres, where his father, who probably worked in the grain trade, remained until his death. John, together with his mother, moved to Constantinople to study medicine. Later, his father fell seriously ill, and we also learn from letters about the cause of this illness, which unfortunately is not specified in more detail, but is described as extremely serious, as well as about John's visits to him, and finally about his father's death. Again, we see the same pieces of manuscripts because we stay a little bit with these letters, because they also contain valuable details about the steps of medical education in Byzantium and suitable locations related. Constantinople is highlighted as the ideal location, offering possibilities for education and professional career likewise, because all the necessary institutions were on site and easily accessible. Specifically on this subject, we have a letter from Yorgos Lakapenos, a close friend of Zacharias, who changed his residence to Thessalonica for professional reasons and now urgently advises John, who would have loved to join him there, by no means to leave Constantinople. Only here, at the city's hospitals, he would be able to combine the study of medical theory with the necessary clinical training, referred to as a daily frontisterion, within the framework of an elaborated tutorial system. More advanced students fulfilled the task of instructing and advising the beginners in gaining practical experience, and their progress was closely watched by the professor of medicine responsible, who acted as some kind of superior authority. And now we can see here some kind of medical practice. We see here a kind of pharmacological laboratorium and a physician with a urine vessel attending to some patients. The course of study was completed with an examination to acquire the kerygmata, a diploma comparable to today's medical license, the approbation, which had to be passed before an examination board consisting of various medical professionals, both employees of the hospital and external representatives of the discipline, administrative officials, and an imperial commissioner. After successfully having obtained the kerygmata, the medical career began at one of the Constantinopolitan hospitals, not necessarily the training hospital, and the young doctor had to work his way up the hierarchy step by step, a task which John Zacharias completed excellently, so that he very soon, in 1307, acquired the highest rank of the career ladder, becoming Aktouarios and imperial physician, and praised by his contemporaries as effective physician and outstanding philosopher, as an iatros tagados kateros te philosophos. John Zacharias is therefore an excellent example of an extraordinary professional career of a Byzantine physician, but also as a representative of the continuous success story of the discipline itself. John Zacharias belonged to an illustrious circle of well-known and highly esteemed scholars around the Emperor Andronicus II Palaiologos, whom we can see here on the slide. And he was a respected authority not only in the medical field, but also of natural philosophy. He advocated a holistic view of medicine in which philosophy played an essential role for understanding the nature and causes of diseases. In his view, practical knowledge and experience were not sufficient for being able to practice medicine in a responsible and conscientious way. Which is this attitude, he follows the tradition of Galen's iatrosophism, stating that the ideal physician has to simultaneously be a philosopher. John's lifelong spiritual mentor, the monk and philosopher Joseph Rakendites, also belonged to the same circle of scholars, and both were very close. Probably somewhat after 1326, both retired together from Constantinople to a monastery, and according to some indications, also might have died in the same year, 1330. Joseph Rakendites planned an extensive, but perhaps never finalized, universal scientific collection, the synopsis of which we can see a part in an Codex Vaticanus, to which John Zacharias not only made a contribution with his two-part treatise on psychic pneuma, but at the same time also provided his mentor with a suitable and individual guide to combat his burnout symptoms. The treatise can be described as a synthesis and quintessence of John's entire medical oeuvre, which was by no means reserved for a purely professional audience, but was equally accessible to amateur physicians, known as filiatri. The filiatros Joseph Rakendites, as John emphatically emphasizes several times, possessed a high degree of medical knowledge that went far beyond a mere theoretical interest, since Joseph was even capable of expertly performing phlebotomy. In addition, John's medical oeuvre includes two further large-scale works, a 7-part uroscopy, and there we can see the father of uroscopy on the left side of the slide, the famous Theophilos, and on the right side we can see a part of John's uroscopy in a London manuscript of the Wellcome Library. And his 7-part uroscopy supplements the relevant ancient, late antique, and Byzantine sources with excerpts from Arabic and perhaps also Persian uroscopies. The uroscopy also includes 11 very interesting narrative case studies, and this is really very interesting because they are really narrative and illustrating the not always unclouded relationship between doctors and their patients. Sometimes it was really troublesome. John's uroscopy became very popular with Western humanist physicians, for example, Ambrogio Leone of Nola, who taught medicine in Padua in the 15th and 16th century. And of particular interest was John's redefinition of the urine vessel and its scaling, which also we can see on this slide in the manuscript from London from the Wellcome Library. John's 3-part medical epitome covers in 6 books divided in 3 parts the fields of diagnostics, therapeutics, and pharmacology, and was also dedicated to a famous filiatros whom we can see here enthroning on the right-hand side of the slide, the high-ranking and widely influential state official Alexis Apokrafkos, on the occasion of a diplomatic mission as some kind of vademecum or ephodion. With this approach, John's medical epitome is placed in the tradition of medical epitomes going back to the late antique Aktouarios and his oeuvre related. So about something about the medical epitome, it is called, as we can see on the slide, in Greek, biblion iatrikon or iatriki symptomos, and the Latin title De Metodo Medendi reminds us of Galen's De Metodo Medendi, and it was created in 16th century by Cornelius Henricus Mathesius, the first translator and editor of the Latin version, and it was deliberately chosen from some manuscript subtitles for suggesting a direct, albeit not existing, reference to Galen's Methodos Medendi, and this we can here see in the title of this manuscript, which shows the slide, to Sophotato Aktouario Iatro Ioannou, Therapeuticis Methodos Biblion Proton, and this is crucial. And in the next line, we can read the dedication to Apokofkos. Both opera, The Medical Epitome and On Psychic Pneuma, were certainly worked on almost simultaneously around 1320 or 21 and finished before 1326 when John and Joseph left Constantinople together, heading for monastic retreat. The close intertwining is evident from numerous cross-references and several chapters of the medical epitome being drawn from psychic pneuma and vice versa. So, for example, the chapters on physiology, dealing with the bodily mixtures, the classes, the natural capacities and activities, the dynamis and energiae, as well as the chapters on dietetics and maybe also some parts of the chapters on bathing and gymnastics. In the proem to the second book of the medical epitome, which we can see on the slide, an extract from, again, from this London Codex of the Wellcome Library. And here, John Zacharias explains to Alexis Apokafkos in detail the parallel work on both opera and the problems of coordination and time management related. After a brief excursus about friendship and the obligations related, John assures Alexis that his claim to the promised medical epitome has absolute priority, even though he has rewritten and reused some relevant parts for the treatise on psychic pneuma promised to Joseph Rakinditis, to whom he is likewise bound in friendship. Albeit he has already sent Joseph some Antiquity, he is nevertheless eager to fulfill his promise to Alexis about the timely finalization of the manual intended for his mission. The first part of John Zacharias' treatise on psychic pneuma concentrates entirely on the theoretical explanation of the psychic pneuma. What is highly innovative is that John expands the traditional pneumatology to the three types of pneumata originating in different organs, the brain, the heart, and the liver, which produce psychic, vital, and vegetative fluids. Depending on the specific organ's qualities, he adds a fourth and gastric pneuma originating in the stomach. Against the backdrop of his practical work as a physician, combined with precise observation of his patients, it is this aspect, namely the emphasis of the importance of the stomach as well as the entire digestive system, that is particularly emphasized within the framework of his therapeutical concept. Thus, psychic emotional problems are not only able to impact the stomach, but also conversely, digestive problems can gravely affect the psychic emotional balance. John explains the intensity of the four pneumata's effects on the whole organism in detail and analogously to the humoral pathological body concept, with their variations depending on the characteristics of the organs in which they originate. A harmonious relationship of all the internal body fluids is a prerequisite for holistic health and well-being. And this is why I put on the slide this marvelous picture of the four bodily fluids from Mount Athos, from the Codex, from the Iveron monastery, which shows the intertwining of the body fluids represented as personifications, multicolored personifications. A harmonious relationship of them is the prerequisite for holistic health and well-being, and digestive disorders produce bodily fluids of incompatible substance, from which a kind of vapor develops that is responsible for all kinds of blockages inside the body and for the corresponding physical and psychological damages arising from them. The psychic emotional fluid, defined by John Zacharias as psychic pneuma, is particularly susceptible because it reacts extremely sensitively to any negative influences. This is due to its ethereal and subtle substance, and it is also why it requires a special care. The care must firstly concentrate on dietary measures, the so-called regimina, the subject of the second part of the treatise, which take into account not only the qualities of certain foods, but also their concrete individual application. Thus, very nutritious types of grains and cereals, where we have a splendid publication by the Ceraneum team, and the products made from them, the whole meal products, are beneficial for people working physically, but not at all advisable for intellectual workers. In relation to the symptoms he observed in Joseph Racinditis, John Zacharias therefore advises the consumption of light white flour products, since these can be absorbed most completely by an organism not working physically and one which is also weakened by regular periods of fasting and starvation, as obligatory for Orthodox monastics, without blocking the internal body fluids. In the further course of the text, various vegetables and fruits are analyzed, some sort of them we can see on the slide, according to their nutritional and therapeutic value. According to John Zacharias, some of them have no nutritional value at all, but are highly recommended as regulating remedies that purge the body internally. In this very context, John also differentiates between cultivated and wild growing forms. For example, in the case of radishes, the wild form is extremely valuable therapeutically due to its powerful purging effects, but otherwise has no nutritional value at all. In general, John advises against highly flatulent vegetables and fruits, or recommends forms of preparation regulating and balancing their flatulating properties. For example, pulses should always be soaked for a long time, drained, and then cooked thoroughly. Asparagus is considered the ideal food with the best qualities, high in nutritional value as well as therapeutically valuable as a diuretic. John therefore recommends consuming it as often as possible in season and even preserving it by pickling in order to have a supply available out of season. Since the treatise's addressee, Joseph Racinditis, is committed to the fasting rules of Orthodox monasticism and therefore abstains completely from eating meat, John apologizes several times for including different kinds of meat in the treatise as well, but he emphasizes that although the treatise is primarily intended for Joseph, it should also be useful to other people seeking similar advice. For the sake of completeness, he does not want to exclude the qualities of various kinds of meat. Here too, the rule applies that the less the physical work, the lighter the food. For purely intellectual workers, poultry is preferred to other types of meat. In accordance with the Orthodox monastic rules, fish and seafood are allowed at certain times, and John gives clear preference to saltwater fish over the richer and therefore harder to digest freshwater fish. John's recommendations on dairy products, where we also have a splendid publication by the Ceraneum team, also seems very modern. Also, lactose intolerance was still completely unexplored and totally unknown in his times. He states purely on the basis of observation and experience that sheep and goat's milk is much better tolerated by the organism than cow's milk. His warning against all oversalted and cured foods is also quite consistent with today's dietary advice. It is in the second part of his treatise that John develops a detailed, individually tailored health program that accords with modern demands in every respect. A central component of this program is a detailed dietary plan emphasizing a balanced distribution of the day's meals, and at least 2 meals a day are required. Furthermore, John Zacharias advises a balanced and individually adapted exercise and gymnastics program. In the course of his text, he lists different types of physical exercises and sports, but simultaneously emphasizes that in some cases, just a simple walk might be absolutely sufficient, especially for people not used to any sporting activities at all. Concluding, he also advises bodily hygiene, bathing therapies, and regular intervals of rest and activities. Both parts of his treatise impressively convey that John Zacharias combined the entire diversity of ancient, late antique, and Byzantine medical sources with the philosophical and theological knowledge base of an educated Byzantine. In addition, he draws on rich practical experience as well as manifold inspiration from the cross-cultural, professional, scientific dialogue common at his time, especially in the environment of Byzantine hospital institutions and as a part of a scientific community including Muslim and Jewish representatives of Arabic medical cultures. And now we are coming to the manuscript tradition, and I will tell you a little bit about the recension connected with my critical edition to be in progress. The Greek text of the treatise on psychic pneuma is preserved in 35 manuscripts. I've written them all on the slide and kept in around 20 different libraries throughout Europe. Almost all manuscripts date between the 14th and 16th centuries, with the largest number being from the 15th century. Intratextual references, secondary annotations, glosses, and margins reveal that copyists and readers examined the text's contents, professional terminology, grammar, and lexicography intensively. The results obtained from the handwritten witnesses and their respective transmission are, apart from their significance for codicology and reception history, of considerable value for understanding cross-cultural knowledge collaboration in the medieval Mediterranean world. The methodology of the critical edition and preparation is aimed at uncovering the text's redaction history more than at establishing an archetypal text. The existence of an autograph cannot be proven, and in light of this methodology is not crucial. Conversely, apocrypha, which have only secondary value for stemma and textual constitution, take on particular significance in showing how the text was later redacted. 4 manuscripts have proven to be apocrypha with identifiable templates, and you can see them here on the slide in blue color. The stemma consists of 2 subordinate textual reductions, of which the second, the younger reduction in particular, shows the way mostly 15th century scholars examined the text intensively. For these 2 recensions, it is possible to distinguish between 2 significantly diverging transmission histories and intended uses. The first is an epistolary reduction, in which the entire text takes the form of a didactical letter, intended for incorporation into Joseph Rakendite's scientific collection, the Synopsis. This reduction is the older one and comprises a total of 5 manuscripts with a focus in the 14th century, and them you can see green colored on the slide. These manuscripts show hardly any variation in their readings, and the contents they share as multi-text manuscripts or so-called Überlieferungsgemeinschaften in German also largely coincide. The individual text is signed for the synopsis. And in this redaction, the text is left almost unchanged as a literary document and shows virtually no traces of any significant engagement with it. Some interesting results of my current research are the following two, and we can see them both on the slide. First, the Parisinus Graecus 3031, which was hitherto unknown in connection with John Zacharias' treatise on psychic pneuma, has been successfully identified as a completely new textual witness containing the entire two-part treatise in close connection with the synopsis of Joseph Rakendites. And the second one on the right side of the slide is the Florentinus Ricardianus 31, and it was previously assumed that this manuscript contains only the first part of the treatise, followed by alleged letters of John Zacharias, and now it is indisputable to be revised, this assumption, since the alleged letters can be identified without question as the entire second part, the therapeutical part of John's treatise. Independently from the epistolary redaction, there exists another redaction destined for practical use, for which the preponderance of manuscript witnesses come from the 15th century. This redaction is characterized by an explicitly practical orientation and shows that the text content and terminology was examined intensively. The manuscripts constituting this redaction contain numerous annotations and marginal comments, and certainly should be assigned to a professional clinical therapeutical environment. This form of transmission is emblematic of Byzantine scientific literature, and it documents various stages of working on the text in approximately 3 sublevels, focusing and evaluating its contents, but also refining its professional terminology and rendering it more precisely. Some passages of the text are questioned, continuously evaluated, and intensively discussed. Its terminology is constantly updated, and individual therapeutical concepts and recommendations are supplemented, revised, and rewritten on the basis of the user's practical experiences, knowledge gained, cross-cultural collaboration, and innovative discoveries. As a special feature of Byzantine medical literature, this phenomenon requires special methodological attention and is significant for the history of science, as it conveys a vivid picture of practitioners' detailed intellectual engagement with the relevant texts. It is precisely the emphasis on divergent reception histories that provides us with interesting insights into physicians' contemporary scientific exchanges, as well as into their cross-cultural scholarly collaboration and networking structures as they discussed and applied new therapies. Of particular relevance regarding the evolution of the text is the determination of the significance of the texts that were transmitted together in the manuscripts. That is, the manuscript context in which on psychic pneuma was transmitted. These textual groupings have much to say about the text reception, such that the context of the commentaries in the text, its marginalia, interlinear commentaries, and disciplinary annotations, as well as the arrangement and internal structure of each manuscript's textual groupings, provide crucial indications of its users and reception history and the text's place within cross-cultural scholarly networks. A very interesting chapter, which is evident from the manuscript tradition, is the chapter of the accompanying paratexts. Evidence of the continuous professional examination and evaluation of Byzantine medical literature is to be spotted as paratextual structures accompanying and commenting on or supplementing the main text, mainly written on the margins of the manuscripts. And on the slide, we can see an example from an Oxford manuscript from Bodleian Library. But sometimes paratexts are also inserted between the lines of the main text. The focus of these changes is according to the user, who might, for example, add terminological, philological, and linguistic specifications, or discuss and specify the main text's practical and therapeutical statements, or even occasionally include diagrams and drawings. And here on the slide, we can see special paratext discussing the recommended seafood in all their species and genera. The intensive dialogue between text and paratext has not yet been studied at all in the context of Byzantine medical literature, let alone recorded methodically within critical editions. For this reason, an adequate editing method is now being developed, or I just try to do this, for the critical edition of the treatise on psychic pneuma, in order to do justice to the paratext's cultural historical significance as evidence of a vivid dialogue with the main text. Maybe we should speak of metatextuality better than paratextuality. In the specific case of the treatise on psychic pneuma, a total of 9 different groups of paratexts have already been identified and transcribed, and these contain fascinating and sometimes detailed discussions of certain passages, with the relevant manuscripts occasionally even displaying divergent readings. Of particular importance are clinical case studies based on observations of individual patients, which provide direct insights into everyday medical practice. The close examination of the manuscript shows that the evaluation of medical literature was surely not limited to the intratextual content, but also extended to stixis and punctuation. By reworking the punctuation, the scribes, most of whom were doctors themselves, like here Dimitros Paparoumenos Savromatis, which we can see an example of an Parisinus copied by his hand on the slide. And this is a very interesting example. And it contains John Zacharias' treatise on psychic pneuma, and Paparoumenos' sophisticated punctuation provides a convincing individual interpretation of the text without interfering with any of its word arrangement. The first part of the treatise imposes different sources on top of each other in several layers, to some extent in an extremely elliptical and paraphrastic manner. Aristotle's treatise De Anima on the soul is one of these foundations, but also the various late antique and Byzantine commentaries on Aristotle's works, especially that of John Philoponos, and there's a particular focus on the nearly contemporary commentary on Aristoteles by Nikephoros Vlemedes. Another essential source, at least for the first part of the treatise, is the Theophilos reduction of Middle Byzantine Christian anthropology using Galen's 3-part pneumatology in relation to the 3 parts of the soul as a structuring principle. The Theophilos reduction primarily distinguishes between physical and psychic organs, and this we can see here on the slide in the diagram from Codex Marcianus Graecus, the eldest textual witness, manuscript witness of this treatise. subdividing them into central organs like liver, heart, and brain, and comprehensive organs, periectica, moria, like arms and legs, as well as the spine and the reproductive organs. By introducing the term of comprehensive organs with special features, the unification of all the characteristics of the purely physical and purely psychic organs, the Theophilos reduction of Christian anthropology represents a classification of the parts of the body that is just as innovative as in other respects John Zacharias' four-part pneumatology. Describing, for example, the vegetative energy being housed in the liver and for which the gastric pneuma acts as vehicle, as some kind of ochyma, as comprehensive periecticotera, John might refer directly to Theophilos' definitions. Moreover, John's argumentation about the vegetative pneuma, the pneuma physicon, originating in the liver as the result of a complex nutritional physiology, follows quite closely Theophilos' explanations. The purification of the psychic pneuma being the vehicle of the rational capacity, the logistikon, is a central aim for Christian anthropology as well as for John Zacharias. And the second part of the treatise, with its practical and therapeutical focus, is based on a selection of dietetic sources, in particular on the relevant writings of Galen and Paul of Aegina, intertwined with excerpts from Theophanes Chrysouvalantes and the Dinameron of Nicholas Mirepsos, as well as from John Zacharias' three-part medical epitome. The technique of compilation used by John Zacharias represents a methodological peculiarity in the context of Byzantine medical epitomizing, since, with a few exceptions, the sources are hardly quoted literally, but rather hinted at in the form of extensive paraphrases as a kind of thought chains or source d'inspiration, as Stavros Lazaris phrased it once. This methodology exactly mirrors the intellectual conversations of the scholarly circle John was part of, and therefore his treatise on psychic pneuma not only is an homage to his spiritual mentor, Joseph Rakenditis, but also a way for John to let his scholarship shine. To conclude, John's treatise on psychic pneuma, with its manuscript tradition, not only displays special features within Byzantine medical literature, but also proves to be a crucial source for evaluating and discussing cross-cultural scholarly collaboration and scientific networking within medieval medical cultures. Moreover, several points of John Zacharias' work contribute significantly to medieval medical history. His redefinition and rewriting of traditional pneumatologies, his emphasis on anthropological aspects, and his activity in a cross-cultural hospital system, where professional networking was based on mutual collaboration and scientific exchange, as well as on continuous evaluations of therapeutic methods and on concepts born from empirical expertise. The critical edition of John's treatise on psychic pneuma, currently in preparation, is based for the first time on the collation of all the relevant manuscripts, including their paratextual environment. It also takes into account the manuscript's multitextual environment as well as the treatise's contextualization with modern psychiatric research, which is not only a big challenge but also an absolute novelty in editing medieval and Byzantine primary sources with significant value for the contextualization of psychosomatic phenomena. And with this, thank you so much for your interest and for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. And we will turn off the Yes. And I think it's a good moment to start our discussion. If you have any questions, people here in the institute, as well as our online participants, please don't hesitate.
If I may.
Yeah.
It's a very general question. Basic. According to the theory,
Yeah.
and according to John Zacharias, do we have in our bodies pneumas, all this kind of pneumas in brain, in stomach, in heart, always, or is like, for example, it's present only in brain and it depends on our diet and I don't know, physical activity.
Mhm.
So sometimes only in brain, sometimes only in heart, depending on the age, on the physical activity, on diet.
Thank you so much. This is a very interesting question because, you know, in medicine now there are some alternative therapeutical concepts coming back, and they are like Ayurvedic medicine, which is based on humoral pathology. And this is and it is much more interesting, your question, because I was always wondering what is a psychic pneuma, what is psychikon pneuma. And I was discussing with a psychiater, in fact, who is a specialist for anxiety disorders. And he asked me to translate and to paraphrase him some passages from John's treatise. And I did so. And he said, it is really interesting for modern psychiatry because we have some kind of synapses in the brain, which is called amygdala, because they are looking like almond, like mandorle. I don't know the English word. And this is said in modern psychiatric research. It might be some signals for emotions to be sent from them. So this might be something like a psychic pneuma. And of course, John Zacharias couldn't know this because he did not do brain and surgery and neurology, but he observed his patients very carefully and very closely. And this is also, we can also spot from these case narratives in his urology that he did so. And he came to the conclusion that in the human body there must be some sorts of fluids which have their origin in some organs which dominate their being active in the body. And so in the case of the psychic pneuma, he says it's a bodily fluid originating in the brain, which is very right in the modern psychiatric sense, originating in the amygdala, and which is distributed all over the body, over the nerves and the neurological system. And this, in my opinion, is a very interesting statement, which tells us a lot about the value of historical sources and about the observation of these medieval and especially Byzantine doctors. So this is, I think, this is a very good thing, working, cooperating with psychiatric. Thank you so much for having this question.
And I think Professor Kokoszko online.
I hope I can be heard and seen. I'm very sorry, as you can see, I'm not in the place I intended to be, but this is in a way a very good starting point for discussion. So first of all, thank you for this lecture, which was very well structured and very easy to follow. and which is very important because it says how many deficiencies we've got on our part, and how important is your publication of John Zacharias' Aktouarios. The other thing which comes immediately to my mind, having in mind that I'm in the place which is called the hospital, is like a practical use of John Aktouarios' words, yeah, because as we can all see, our well-being, it's not only our physicality, but it's also our mentality. As you, Isabel, reminded us, there is an interconnection which is extremely important and which should be like for very practical reasons should be like employed and used by our doctors. And this, what comes to my mind is, of course, a question to you, but I'm not sure whether clear enough. The question is basically, what's the difference between a hemos and pneuma, or pneuma, you said, yeah? Because, as you said, this psychic pneuma or pneuma is produced in the brain, but as far as I know, this is very similar to black bile, yeah, which is in the Hippocratic and Galenic system. And of course, there is this some like interconnection between the state which is called melancholy, which is basically something like a mental disorder, like depression, for instance. And as I presume exactly, this phenomenon was on the one hand described by John Aktouarios, and on the other, it was his main goal just to dispose of this illness, for instance, by means of something which is quite obvious, like giving us proper food and making us say what act responsibly. That means, for instance, like molding our biome in a way that's appropriate for our health. Yeah. So this, from the point of the modern, at least say like commercial, like sort of science that's presented to us, this seems to be not only reasonable but also extremely practical. So for the very last comment, and then I try to like sum it up. I just remember Galen, and there is his treatise on the soul, which is very optimistic because he says that we can. It's very hard to say what soul is and where it is situated, but it should be optimistic because we know that we can change our soul so we can become better exactly because of what we eat and how we behave. And this is basically the same what John Aktouarios teaches us. So this is excellent. So one thing. So the first point I would like to make, this is something that really reminds me of the Hippocratic and the Galenic system, but we call what they call hemoi, we call pneumata, so which is pneuma. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. The other one, is it right, or am I right, that the psychic pneuma is something like a substitute for black bile, which is which we find in Hippocratic and the Galenic system. And the third thing is, for me, extremely like important, that you should commercialize on your work. Because the ideas that you like editing for some time are extremely practical, and they can be likely seen by anyone as a sort of very good advice we can take to our mind. I'm sorry for all those things that happen, but other people's are getting just being injected and so on and so on. and it's from time to time very hard to switch off what's going around. So thank you, Isabel. It was fascinating. And actually, I wish I would be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maciej, for being with us, even from the hospital. And thank you so much for your great comments and hints. I think you are absolutely right by assuming that it is very important for the soul, for the psychic pneuma, but also for everything which is connected with mental impairments, with mental health, or let me say also neurological things. This is that it is connected with some kinds of helping the body to promote the soul by some kinds of regimina. And John Zacharias is building up his four-parted pneumatology on some extracts of Hippocratic and Aristotelian pneumatology, which of course is based in the humoral pathological system, but he is associating this psychic pneuma with a logisticon being located in the brain. So this might be some slight shifting from the black bile. But this, I think, is a crucial point, and I will research into this a little bit deeper. Maybe we can find in some manuscripts, paratexts, some shifting, because this is very interesting. Because in one chapter, Johannes Zacharias also cites Hippocrates, but not in connection with the humoral pathology and the humorous, but he cites him in some saying of Hippocrates that if the human being could not feel pain, it would be very bad, because he would be not fit for therapy. And this is also very important, because this also is cited by Theophilos. And what you said about the mental impairments and mental diseases being strong focused, it is also coming from Theophilos, because Theophilos, he is building up on Galen by saying, we don't know exactly where the seat of the soul, the hegemonikon to psychis, is to be located, whether it is in the heart, like the Holy Evangelium and like even Homer is telling us, or maybe it is located in the brain. Because me being a doctor, I always spot people who having mental impairments, and then he lists quite a long list. I can spot that people are doing all these things with the brain. They are doing plasters on it and wrappings, and so it must be the brain. And so it is, I think it is what we can spot within this Theophilos treatise is step by step accumulating Galenic and Hippocratic knowledge with Byzantine texts, with Byzantine sources, for building up an entire holistic unit. Did this somehow near
Yes,
you?
in a way. Yes, in a way, yes, it does. But are there any, for instance, physical differences between something, what he calls the psychic pneuma, and other things? You mentioned something that, as far as I remember. And if I got you right, that this is a liquid, yes?
He says it's a kind of fluidum. He not
Okay.
describing describe as a liquid. He says it's a kind of emotional fluidum, and this,
Emotional fluid.
I'm not sure whether he means it might be just a kind of energetic stream, you know.
Yeah. Okay, I do understand. I mean, basically, yes, you've answered all my questions. I do agree. I do appreciate. I do think it's very, very practical in the modern era, especially in places just like this central hospital of the Łódź Medical University, in which they do not know how much influence has something like the conditions, like the food, and of course human relations upon the feeling or the well-being of their patients. But this is the other story. Isabel, fascinating thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maciej, and I do really hope that your physical and psychic pneuma will be very, very soon and lasting, very, and you are very soon out of this.
Yes, definitely it will. Thank you. Thank you.
My very best wishes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so take it in person.
In fact, may I?
Yeah.
Yes.
You are the first.
Oh.
All right. So in fact, I've got two questions.
Yeah.
And the first question is, in fact, a bunch of questions itself, because I'd like to use this wonderful opportunity that you are here and you have under magnifying glass of your research a really big amount of manuscripts.
Yeah.
And the very fact that you are also interested in this interlinear or the all other forms of glossy, it gives the opportunity to ask the question as such of London Arundel 537.
Yeah.
Those glosses, are they coming from one manuscript to another? They are also rewritten by the scribes later, or they are rather unique? And what's the proportion in between of them, between the remarks, the additional information or discussion or negative opinion on what's in the main text?
Maybe let's start with this, because this might be a little bit a little bit broader, because this is we have both cases. We have some manuscripts creating really unique paratexts or paratextual structures, and then we have other kind of manuscripts rewriting existing paratexts, but changing them and evaluating them. And so, as you've mentioned, the Arundelius, it is interesting because this is really unique. And this mentioning of the Aktouarios as a source of information, this is really unique, and it's the only textual witness having this paratext. But as when we are coming to the discussions of some keywords in the text, like kinesthesis, or like these passages about the seafood, we find some more manuscripts being dependent on each other and having rewritten also the paratextual elements, but not literally, because they are changing it and they are adapting it and they are altering it, and they are adding some in case of the seafood. It's fascinating, because it started with just some one line or two lines, and it grew into a long list of very differentiated seafood which are allowed, and this is especially interesting because I found this manuscript. I found these paratextual elements being part of a manuscript which is in its textual environment part of a codex which is dedicated mainly to canonical law. So this is of course this is understandable because it is the Orthodox monasticism is thinking about what is allowed and is clearly defining not to make any mistake, to eat anything wrong if we want to follow John's regimina. So I think, did I answer your first?
Yes, but it's really an interesting approach as well to publish both the main text and the paratext.
I think it's
may
so
be a bit
important.
difficult, but I think the digital era produces also good solutions for that, also for the printed text.
Yes, because I mean, you know, I mean, it's really interesting to have this because it's a part of the transmission. And if I skip it or if I just publish the main text, it is a very important part of the transmission is lacking. And I think this is we cannot afford, because this is part of the tradition. And if we are doing now critical editions of Byzantine medicine, which is indeed distinguished from antique medicine, and it's not a refrigerator of antiquity, as Vivian Nutten once said. He was continuing that we think it is so within Byzantine medicine. The reason is we don't understand the text, and I think he has a point with this, because we have to understand the reductions and the working with the text. And I think we have to understand how these people, these doctors, use these texts, because it's technical, it's scientific literature.
But most of, if I understand you properly, most of those notes are made by users, not scribes who are rewriting the...
No, sometimes the users also were the scribes, like we have seen in the case of Dimitros Paparoumenos, who was a doctor, who was a physician, and he copied these texts for his own practical use. And he added this, in my opinion, very sophisticated punctuation, which divides the text and which structures the text, sorry, up to a very clear understanding, because we have in the eldest manuscript by Johannes Zacharias, we have these thought chains somehow without any punctuation, and it's very difficult to understand it. And I've discussed this problem lately with Panayotis Agapitos, who is working on grammatical sources, and we had some exchange about this, and he said there are examples in other Byzantine texts from the 14th century, for example, Theodoros Metochites. We can see that it was dictated. And so the punctuation or the not existing punctuation is maybe due to dictation. And so maybe this is the reason why we don't have an autograph of John Zacharias, because there's no reason to have none, because in 14th century we have a lot autographs, but not by Johannes Zacharias. But maybe he was such an important physician and such an authority that he did not write by himself, he dictated, and so we have this kind of transmission.
My second question is short, and about Aktouarios, in fact, and in two places, on two slides of your presentation, in one of the glossae, and I think it was above the illustration of him, the bust or a portrait. He is named Aktouarios. How come that Aktouarios becomes Aktouarios?
This is very common in the text. This is very common that Aktouarios is another reading for Aktouarios, and we have it for example, in a lot of texts coming from the hospital environment, coming the so-called Xenonica Vivlia, which are practical like notebooks written by professional people for professional people, and they include a lot of terminological innovations and a lot of specialities, and there we find very often the reading Aktouarios.
So it doesn't mean that the name of this or this function was forgotten. It just meant that for all those Aktouarioi, the alternative Aktouarioi was accepted, yes? But when they refer in the text just Aktouarios without a name, it's like Homer and the poet, yes? Homer and the poet. So they mean him. So that makes
This is what I assume, because it is some, especially in this Arundelius, it is about the chambers of the brain, of the cerebrum, and it is about the explanation where the parts of the sensation are located in the brain. And this exactly we have in Johannes' medical epitome. And so I assume that with Aktouarios, Johannes should be meant. But we don't know, because we have a lot of Aktouarii and Aktuarii in the hospital environment, and we even have some not Byzantine Aktuarii, like the famous Abraham Sarakinos, who is cited on many cases in the Xenonica Vivlia. And this is another problem, because we have also this title Aktouarios connected with non-Byzantine people, which means that they must be embedded in this hospital environment anyhow. We don't know how. And this is there are so many questions and so many really interesting things to be found in these texts. This is an intriguing literature, this medical literature, especially if you delve a little bit into the manuscripts and have a look on the variant readings.
Thank you very much. And in fact, thank you for the work you're doing, because we should never stop praising those who are publishing the sources.
Thank you so much.
Selfless work that helps us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This is exactly the support I need.
Okay. I have one.
Yes.
I have one question
Yeah.
about is there any connection between Saul and Bobby in the point of view of John Zacharias, or in the most popular point of view of Byzantine Empire medics, and what type of this connection it is, and in what way the body affects the soul and the soul can affect the body.
Thank you so much. This is a very interesting question, which brings us very close to the heart of Byzantine medicine, because they all have Byzantine medicine always states that there is a connection, a very strong connection between body and soul. And this is a kind of dualism which was focused for the first time very strongly in the Middle Byzantine Christian anthropology, where body functions were explained with some kind of a psychological or sometimes also theological explanations. And we have on the other side transcendental things, everything connected with the soul, for better understanding being explained by examples from the medicine, from the anatomy, from the bodily functions. And so this deep intertwining between the humores being hosted in the body and being responsible for all the bodily functions also have a very deep impact to the psychic functions and to the at least to the soul. And this is very strongly expressed within Johannes Zacharias, because he says that some classes and some pneumatological streams are in fact the orchima, the vehicle for the soul. And this is very, I think this is a very close connection. And so this is something to be followed up all over the Byzantine medical text, because it has always had a very strong philosophical component. And philosophy in Byzantine times also means intertwinement with theology, you know.
So the soul was hosted by the phlegmas in the body. This was the way of connection. Okay.
The soul was not just hosted, but it was also I'm searching for the vocabulary. It was, if there were some bodily disturbances, it goes directly to the soul. And mental impairments are in most cases, so the Byzantine physicians say, connected with bodily dysfunctions and dyscrasia.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you for your question.
Do you have more questions?
I want to ask you, the different types of Pneuma was responsible on the different things, yes?
The different kinds of pneuma were responsible. Yes, that's absolutely right. They were responsible for different impairments, but also for different bodily functions. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, you know, this is really interesting, because we always had a three-parted pneumatology. We had this the main organs for this were the liver, the heart, and the brain. But the innovative thing done by Johannes Zacharias is adding a fourth pneuma, which is in the stomach, the gastric pneuma. And with this four-parted pneumatology, he is able to connect the pneumatology with the humoral pathology. And so this connection he makes, with this connection, he's able to explain much more impairments and diseases as with just using the three-parted one. Thank you.
Any other questions in the room or online? I cannot see any.
No, neither me.
So, Professor, Thank you very much. It was a pleasure and honor. And Professor will give another lecture tomorrow at Peterman's Palace at 12 o'clock. All those who are in Łódź or in the vicinity are warmly invited. Professor, thank you once more.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your interest, for your attention, and for your questions.
And I would like to thank all participants in the room and also those who found their time and connected with us online. Thank you very much. Dziękuję Państwu serdecznie.